about conscious leadership. It leads to great companies. Great title. And I'm very curious what you're going to share with us. We are going to wait for around 30 seconds to give everyone a chance to pop in. And after 30 seconds, I will start with introducing you and tell a little bit about you and your background.
Thank you,
Let's
Marduka.
give people a chance to pop in.
Great.
And then I keep it to 30 seconds. I'm very strict because we have a busy schedule, you and I, Rixt.
Yeah.
Because the lecture, as I understood, but correct me if I'm wrong, Rixt, is about leaders that can increase their level of consciousness and create organizations where everyone has the opportunity to thrive and leave this world in a better place. And we were already discussing a little bit the impact of online working, and you were talking about that you were coaching some international teams that usually come together 4 times per year, but really miss the bonding, the social bonding together. So it is the energy and the togetherness is very important, and leadership is also an important thing. I'm going to introduce you a little bit. You have a very impressive career. It started over 15 years ago. You would not say that because you look very young, indeed, in the USA, continuing in Hong Kong and Europe. You are very international. You are an executive coach and leadership consultant. You're very passionate about elevating business performance through the conscious practice of leadership. You are a dedicated source of change, combining logic, a bit of intuition, and a very down-to-earth approach to creating results that last. You have worked with thousands of individuals. Well, when I read thousands of, I always think of Trump. Why is that? Millions
I
and
don't know.
millions of people. But you have worked with a lot of individuals from 30 plus countries, consulting for many Fortune 500 companies, and focusing on professional development for multicultural groups, teams, and professionals ranging from first line managers to CEO. So very impressive indeed. Very welcome to you, Rixt. I give the, as we say, het stokje to you in the Netherlands.
Yes. Thank you so much, Marduka, for your introduction. It's wonderful to be here tonight with all of you. And I was just saying to Marduka, I like to spend a lot of time offline. So I really appreciate you guys, all of you, calling in, zooming in tonight. And I can't see you, which is too bad, because I like making a personal connection. But I trust there is a group, and we're going to dive into conscious leadership, and I'm going to explain a bit what it is and how it creates great organizations. It's the first time I'm speaking on this festival, and I do think it's a very important purpose. It serves a great purpose, and especially now because we're in this global pandemic, and we all deserve a bit of well-being, and mental health issues are rising. So it's important to spend some time on that. And leaders can make a change here, can make a difference. So as a way to check in, what I'd like us to do, if you can drop your location, so where are you calling in from, in the chat box, so we can see who's where. And I'll start sharing my screen. Let's see. So it's Hattem, Wapenveld. Great. Maastricht. Okay. So maybe I could do this one in Dutch. Don't know if everyone's Dutch, but I'll continue in English. So I just thought it would be nice to maybe, because we're so restricted and traveling is not possible at this moment, why don't we imagine we go somewhere? And I just thought it would be nice to go to this place. And maybe you recognize it. It's Siena, and it's the heart of Tuscany. And just imagine yourself standing on this beautiful square and looking at this great town hall, Palazzo Pubblico. And you see a great tower, which has a white crown. And we're not going to climb the stairs, the 400 stairs, but we're going to enter the town hall. And when we enter the town hall, we're going to a room, and it's called the Room of the Circle of Nine. And in this room, we will see a giant fresco. And it was painted in the 14th century. Ambrogio what's his name? Lorenzetti painted it. And it is called Good and Bad Governance. And so on, and it's giant, it's really huge. And so whenever the council of the town of Siena, the city, came together, they were reminded of the governance. And on one wall, you can see the good governance. So this represents good governance. And you see the guy with the white beard on the throne. And around this person, there are 6 virtues. So you can see peace, you can see justice, prudence. There's lots of good virtues around this king, which represents the government of Siena. And then there is also angels floating around, faith, love floats around at the top. And the next fresco shows the consequences of good governance. So here we see a land that's filled with acres. People are working on it. There are trees with fruits, and it's being harvested. So good governance creates great circumstances, and the community flourishes. Now, the other side of the room, you can probably guess this, shows bad governance. So here we see a devil-like figure in the midst, and there's still people or persons around this devil. There's war, there's evil, and at the feet of this person you can see justice. Oh, sorry, just went back. Justice being bounded at his feet. And there is a goat at the feet of this devil representing lust. Now this fresco is in bad shape, so we can't see it all. But there are devils, little person or angels around the devil floating, and their cruelty, betrayal, and fraud. So this shows a picture of bad governance, and we can also see the consequences here. So, the villages are on fire, there is not much being harvested here. So it's a landscape in decline, and it's desolated. So the message of these frescoes is very clear. So good leadership leads to peace and well-being. Now, we all knew this since the 14th century, right? So what's new here? Good leadership is about serving the community. And I guess that was something Lorenzetti wanted to make clear, that whenever the Council of Siena came together, that they remembered serving the community. Now, you might think, well, it's 2020, this is old news. And we work in self-managed teams. We have agile way of working, it's scrumming. Do we still see leadership this way? And yes, leadership still makes a difference. Although it might be fluid, we change roles. There's more informal leadership maybe than formal leadership, but still leaders define, co-create the culture of the organization, and they influence the sense of belonging for people in that organization. So leadership still has a strong influence on the culture of an organization. And when we say serving the community now, we think about other things. And when we think about serving the community now, we can think about the Sustainable Development Goals. And more organizations put these Sustainable Development Goals see that as a part of their purpose. And when you read these goals, maybe you can think of, or just look at them and reflect on, which of these goals do I support when I'm working? So if you like, you can type in the number that you support when you work, or maybe when you're volunteering, or maybe you're an activist, when you're, whatever you feel you're contributing to. Maybe you can share that in the chat box to see, where do we contribute? Lucas said 1 and 5, no poverty. Oh yeah, you just told me about the work you do in housing. Great, someone's 3 and 8, 4, 5, 12, 16. Peace, justice, strong institutions. Yeah, wonderful. So when we look at these goals, and we really take them in, it's wonderful way to become aware of, so where do I put my energy in creating a better world? And so more and more companies use these sustainable goals as a way to create purpose. And that makes sense, because what's becoming clear is that organizations that create a sense of purpose or create a purpose statement perform better than organizations who don't. And so a sense or a purpose statement and a sense of purpose creates a better value proposition. It creates engaged employees. It motivates stakeholders. It creates the sense of direction, which makes it easier for decision making. It spurs innovation, and it increases revenue. So research shows that purpose-led companies outperform the S&P 500. So those are organizations at the top of the 500 largest traded companies in the US. And a study by Ernst & Young showed that a growing number of corporate leaders think that a strong shared purpose can help companies meet global challenges and transform their organization. Now, this was all pre-corona research, right? So I think the corona crisis has made us even more aware of how interconnected everything is and how we now can take this moment to make changes in organizations and and meet those goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So let's look at those purpose statements. So, for example, so the purpose is the why of an organization. So why do we exist? So Vattenfall, the energy company, says to enable fossil-free living. And I think it even says within one generation. Tony Chocolonely, Dutch chocolate making factory, says together we'll make chocolate 100% slave-free. Patagonia, the outdoor clothing company, says we're in business to save our home planet. It should say, not plant. And Roche, the pharmaceutical, says doing now what the patient needs next. So this is their why. This is why they are doing what they're doing. This is why they exist. So having a purpose is a good way. It's a good thing in many different ways. And what I'd like to focus on for tonight is employee engagement, because that makes a difference in well-being and mental state. So when we look at engaged employees, we see that they are healthier, they're happier, they have a better performance, and customer satisfaction goes up. So so they just feel more motivated. They're more fit. There's less stress going on because of their motivation going up. They feel more supported, and they can handle more challenges. So I think this is especially relevant when we look at the current COVID crisis, which is touching so many people around the globe in so many different ways, that engagement can make a difference. Because engaged employees persist even when the going gets tough, and they show more resilience during setbacks. So they bounce back more easily. They have greater endurance, so to speak, because they have a greater motivation. So it absolutely makes sense to be a purpose-led organization, not only for performance, but also to create a healthier planet where people feel more engaged. So it sounds all wonderful, right? Be a purpose-led organization. And it's what a lot of organizations want. So they put a purpose on paper, or they sometimes even put it on the wall or on their website. And they obviously want to reach that purpose. They want to live that purpose. But that is not very easy. So I see many organizations with well-written purpose statements that find it really difficult to achieve it. So it turns out there is a gap between the ambition and the reality. And so this challenge, what I saw, is what I focused on during my master's study, my thesis, human development. And I looked at what factors reduce the gap between paper and practice. So I did a literature study, and I looked at data from around 5,500 leaders in Europe to see, what factors determine closing that gap between the vision and the reality. And the first thing I did was look at the literature. And when I looked at the literature, I found 4 factors. So the first one is around having a vision. And then the other 3 were around relationship orientation, ethical decision-making, and integrity. And then I found that awareness precedes 3 of those factors. So I found the formula that is around consciousness. And so when we want to close that gap, when we want to turn the purpose on paper into practice, then that requires this formula. It starts with having a vision. And then you combine it with self and systems awareness, with what I call consciousness. And when there is self and systems awareness, relationship, integrity, and ethical decision-making go up, which makes it more likely to achieve the vision. So now I talk about vision, which is obviously a bit different than purpose. So vision is derived from purpose. So it's based on the core values that are often stated in the purpose. So purpose is the why, the vision is the how and the what. So for example, Patagonia's purpose is we are in business to save our home planet. And their vision is build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire and implement solution to the environmental crisis. So that's a long sentence. So TED, it's like we all know, I guess, the TED Talk. So TED's purpose is seek deeper understanding of the world, which is the why. And their vision is spread ideas. So it starts with having that vision, which is based on the purpose and often incorporates the values of that purpose. And research shows there is a very strong relationship between having a vision and effective leadership. So it's one of the strongest correlations within different leadership dimensions. Vision is the strongest. Now I'm going to look at the second factor, which is being self and systems aware. So this is around being attentive and aware of what's taking place in the present moment, both internally and externally. It's knowing what you are experiencing while you are experiencing it. You can also call this mindfulness. So it has to do with being in the moment, using your senses. Often it's about slowing down, postponing your judgment. It can be accessed through heartfelt conversation, through reflective exercises, through silence. And sometimes it entails a spiritual practice. So the essence here is to create a deeper connection with here and now, with yourself in that very moment. It's about becoming aware of the quality of the moment. So self-awareness is about improving self, and systems awareness is around improving the system. And I guess the word that captures it all is presence, right? So we have vision, having the vision, and then being aware, self and systems aware. And with that awareness comes a higher level of relationship, a higher level of connection with others, which is key. So when we look at leadership, it is not an absolute factor. It is not in isolation. Leadership is also about followership. So you can see leadership as an emerging event in the human systems that we create. And so by being able to be aware of the relationships that you're building, you'll probably find a way to connect better. And part of that relationship improvement is being able to deliver and receive feedback, to be open to that. The other factor is integrity, which is about being whole and about seeing yourself as a collection of different selves and being able to integrate those. It's also about realizing that you walk your talk and you talk your walk. So you're very aware of how you are showing up as a person and as a leader. So integrity often goes along with healthy self-confidence and kind of embracing the different selves within you. And with that, you often embrace different selves of others. And the last factor is ethical decision-making. So in order to close the purpose gap or to create congruency, right, to make it similar, you need to make good choices. And leaders are organizations' most important decision makers. So they have the greatest power to set goals, to choose a course of action, and make it essential that they demonstrate moral and ethical behavior. So they role model what they stand for, what the organization stands for. And so ethical decision making is about reviewing options and then choosing the most ethical one or the best one. And that requires a deliberate and a non-deliberate process in your thinking. And I was thinking this afternoon, like, how can I put this? Ethical decision making, it's pretty abstract. And I was thinking about Johan Cruyff, a famous Dutch soccer player and known for his philosophical expressions. He once said, before I make a mistake, I don't make it. Right? So ethical decision making is about that, realizing that you are making a decision which could have consequences, and then picking the one that's morally mostly right to you. So this formula then creates more congruence, or in a way to close the purpose gap. So I reviewed the literature, and then I found that these factors all play a role, and that self and systems awareness precede the other factors of relationship, integrity, and ethical decision making. So awareness precedes choice. And with awareness, you simply make better decisions, which is what it comes down to. So in short, conscious leaders have a long-term vision and are conscious of that every single day. I guess that's the essence. Now, how does that work? So this is all theory, right? And I guess it makes sense in a way. But then how do we start closing that gap, and what is the work that we can do? So I'd like to share a couple of client stories with you. And so a while back, I was contacted by a healthcare organization who wanted to increase their level of engagement, because many of the professionals felt a constant high pressure to perform. So it was a group of 8 general practitioners, doctors, and a group of 10, 12 assistants and some other professionals around that. So totally an organization of like 35. Burnout rate was high. And the board asked me to analyze what was happening. And what I found is that people didn't feel really connected to each other, although that was one of the values of the organization. So the values that they put in the purpose statement was transparency, innovation, connection with care. And so it was apparently important to feel connected to each other, but they felt they didn't have the time. There was too much pressure to perform, to see all the patients, to give good care, that they didn't give good care to themselves. So, and so that made people feel frustrated. And there was lots of gossip within the organization, and it had a negative influence on the culture, of course. So I started working with a group of doctors and just having dialogues around, you know, why are you doing what you're doing? What's the purpose of the organization? Which made it come more alive. And what we found out in these conversations was that they felt they didn't know each other very well, and that was getting in the way of connecting. And I think it was one of the doctors, participants, suggesting we want to know more about each other's life story, which is actually a great way to build trust and to get to know each other better. So that's what we did. And it looks like this. So I asked all of them to kind of draw a picture. And you can do this in all kinds of ways, but it's often a good way to kind of share your story and just draw a line and see, you know, what's your narrative, what are situations and people that have influenced you, and share your story. So they all drew kind of a picture like this, and they all shared their story. Which was a very intense couple of hours and very intense session, but beautiful, beautiful to see people really get in touch with each other and trying to understand each other. And by sharing life stories, you kind of create, you weave a fabric, you create a fabric of community. And in times of crisis, it will, you know, will show up. There will be more resilience in the system, and it will create a great resource because people feel a deeper connection for each other. There's more social support. So especially with these doctors going through, you know, many ups and downs, they felt more inclined to share after they heard each other's life story and got to see each other more fully. So now this was one of the things that we did, but we also looked at IT systems. So how can we be more efficient so we have more time with the patients? We actually looked at different groups and different functions and how they saw each other, because there was some kind of, I wouldn't say rivalry, but competition between them. And we had conversation about trying to understand each other better. They actually reorganized the building of the organization. So there was more transparency, and people were able to walk in each other's room now and then and to connect better. So it led to a yearly barbecue where they, you know, they celebrate achievements. So it was just lots of dialogues and coming from that creating structural change together, so that the practice looks more like what they had in mind, what they put on the paper. So this is one story. The other story that I'd like to share is an individual one, working with a female leader in an international organization. And let's call her Pam. And courage and integrity were two of the values of the organization that she really felt at home with. She was a female leader and she wanted to show up more courageously when talking to the board, which were mostly men. And the organization really valued her point of view and the diversity she brought, yet she found it hard to show up fully and speak up more freely. Now, she was really raised as a boy. She was tough, or she is tough. She's very direct, passionate, very charismatic person. And her sunny side is that she is, forthright. She's direct, but she wanted to also be more receptive and reflective, and now and then ask for help, which was difficult for her. But she wanted to include that and become more whole as a person. And so she also wanted to show that side of her. So we kind of explored ways to integrate what I call the shadow side of her. And we did that by, just conversations around what's holding you back, but also around doing some self and some systems awareness exercises. Now, I could, talk for hours around different situations and different client stories. But I guess for the sake of this conference, I'd like to focus on mental health and what can leaders do? How can they be more conscious, create more consciousness, and create a culture where everyone can thrive? And that starts with closing the purpose gap. And that means having a vision and being self and systems aware. And it requires integrity. So embracing the ecology, the different selves within you that are often in discussion. And so we are all many persons. We have different sides. And some of these people within us we know, and others we don't. And maybe someone else knows them, right? So some of these sides in ourselves we long for and we want to meet, and others we want to run away for. And yet in the shadow side, there are many undeveloped strengths, which is often which we often see as weaknesses. And yet, I think if we get a little bit closer to it, it's a way to grow as a person and as a leader, and it will make you more conscious. So I guess as we come to the closure of this talk, I'd like to go back to where we started in Shenna. And now we see the good governance again, with the virtues around him. And we see the bad governance in the shadow. And so it's, in order to be whole, integral, and to have a high sense of integrity, it's helpful to look at the shadow side of yourself as well, because it's a way to grow and to become more whole. So when we acknowledge these sides in ourselves, we can grow. And what I'd like to do now is to do a short little awareness exercise, a self-awareness exercise or a mindfulness exercise to explore these sides in ourselves. So we'll take like 5 minutes, like a little mindfulness exercise, and to explore your side, the sides within you. So please feel free to join me, and then after that we can open up the floor for questions and conversation. So feel free to sit back a bit in your chair. And if you like, you can close your eyes and just take your attention inward. And just become aware of yourself sitting in the chair. Just feel your body on the chair. And your feet on the floor. And now become aware of your breath. Just notice the movement of your breath entering and leaving your body. And now I'd like you to think of a recent occasion when someone was unkind to you, when someone was a bit mean to you. Just recall a situation when someone wasn't nice to you. Don't dwell on it too much, just recall the situation. And just calmly breathe. And now let go of this situation. Just pay attention to your breath again. And now dive into your memory again and think of a moment when you were unkind to someone else. Don't dwell on it. Just think on a situation where you weren't very kind to someone else. Just recall the situation and the person. Just keep on breathing. And now let go of that situation. And now reflect on the idea that everything is connected and nothing happens in isolation. Just sit and breathe and become aware that nothing happens in isolation. And if you like, you can think about that you forgive yourself and others. So you can say to yourself in your mind, I forgive myself and others. Just sit and breathe. And say to yourself, I forgive myself and others. And now simply register what just happened in your mood or in your energy. What's your mood right now? And when you're ready, you can open your eyes again and come back into this conversation. And I'm curious to know, what's your mood right now? So maybe you can type that in the chat box. And the loving kindness meditation that we just did, research shows that this increases positive emotions, and that we that we're more likely, or the part in the brain that gets activated is the part that is about helping others. And the part that separates self from others quiets down. So it's like it diffuses self and others. So they did research with monks who meditated for years and with newcomers. And they saw that the monks developed more activity in the part that says helping others. So that shows that also our brain grows and develops when we train it. So in order to have more empathy, show more love for self and others, we can do this kind of meditation practice, and it will increase our self and systems awareness and our sense of integrity. So let's see. Great. Yeah, so I guess this was my talk. And I'm curious if there are any questions around conscious leadership, closing the purpose gap. And if you like, you can just speak up and I'll hope to answer your question.
I am not sure if people can speak up and unmute the microphones themselves, but you can always ask the questions via Q&A, so that is fine.
Oh yeah, I see. Mark asked a question, if you're not a leader yourself, how do you get your leaders to adopt this conscious mindset? That's a great question, Mark. I think by applying it yourself, you start to role model the behavior, and you start to show up more consciously yourself, which is what people like and admire. And I guess another way is to have a conversation around, without being very judgmental, but maybe staying curious around how do we put this, our purpose, into practice, and maybe where you see it happening and where you're not seeing it yet. I hope that answers
your question, Mark. Hi, Mark, by the way. It answers it for me. I have a question myself also. Am I allowed to ask you that?
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm very curious, as a woman myself and a woman leader also, what is your opinion of differences between women leaders and the difficulties they face with leadership and male leaders, without being too feministic, but there is a difference
Hmm.
also in acceptance of leadership.
Hmm. Yeah. So there is something about the female voice not being heard as quickly as maybe the male voice. So my experience is that it takes maybe a bit longer for female leaders to be recognized. It also takes more speaking up and being heard, being seen within organizations. So whereas a man speaks up once and he's being heard, maybe we women leaders need to speak up twice or three times. And not to get grumpy around that, about that, but to kind of persist. And if you see a pattern within the team or the organization, to see, you know, women are not taking as seriously maybe as men, to address it in a patient way, in a nice way, in a good way. So I guess that would be my answer. It's funny, I work with men and women leaders, and they all have their own theme and they all have their own challenges. So it's really hard for me to say, well, this is typically female leadership challenges, this is typically male challenges. But I guess within the system that the global system that we are in, the culture that we are in, women leaders need to take a bit more action. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the people joining? I think you have said it all, Rixt. It is very
Yeah,
clear.
absolutely fine. Yeah. So it's so funny to talk and not see, well, I saw you, but not to see anyone. It's still a strange experience, right?
It
Difficult
is.
to have a conversation.
I think so. And they are all listening and they're thinking about what questions to ask. And
Yeah, well,
yeah, time-wise, we're also there, Rixt.
yeah.
So if no one has a question so far, I thought it was a very nice story. It was also very nice meeting you.
Thank you, Marduka. Very nice meeting you
And
too.
I always say that normally in conferences, being moderator, I have a nice bunch of flowers to give as a thank you. And this would be a virtual one for you then this
Thank you.
time. But I hope next time we will be able to meet each other in person, and that you are going to join again, because you inspired me and I hope the rest of us too.
Thank you.
So let's do it in person next time.
Yes, let's do that. Thank
If
you
you
so
want to
much.
come from Hattem, then.
Yeah, I'll manage. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Thank you too, and thank you to the audience. I think this was the last meeting of the International Mental Health Festival, as I understood from uh, Remy this evening. It
Mm,
has been a full 2 weeks with a lot of interesting conversations. Some of it I was part of myself. I really like doing it this way, even
mm,
though it was, as you said, weird not to be able to see the listeners and
yeah.
look them into the eyes.
Hmm.
It has also learned me quite some. some things. Moderating in person is a different thing than moderating online.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rixt, and thanks everyone, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.